she works with them. She's a transformation type. She can stay in them longer, and again, she doesn't lose her damn mind. Again, I made this video before I changed the starting packages. In this case, she would be SBBBB. She'd have 4 Bs. But the last rank, the telekinesis, that's also how she flies. Move things with her mind. Since it's a B rank and she is a B rank psychic, works as an A rank, so she effectively has A rank flight. The S rank move I gave her to stand above the top of it is a psychic slash. She separates things with her mind. And since it is S rank and she's got the B rank transformation, she can use it while she's in Ozaru form, and that is pretty much the top of her being deadly. Now her Ozaru transformation is also B rank, just like her transformation type. So when she's in the Ozaru, she's considered an A rank Ozaru. Her other abilities include mind control. Again, that would be a B rank, but it mixes with the psychic, so it'd be an A rank in effect. And then the psychic stealth, that's her removing her from somebody else's mind. So they basically don't think of her. She can be right in front of them, and they don't pick up any of that sense data. She's blocking that out with her mind. And again, that would be B rank, not A rank. However, since she's the B rank psychic, it melds well and would perform as an A rank skill. She never really became a fighter. She didn't take the Kami-sen in martial arts like Goku did, and she's lived a life of lax. So her base power level is 300, and she tops out at somewhere around 6,500. The reason for that is she would top out at 650 when she's at her most powerful, using that good old psychic slash, and she gets the 10 times booster from being the mighty Ozaru. Up last, I'm going to do a scientist. Scientists are unique in the fact that they have unlimited resources. As I said in the brief intro, they can have anything. If it costs more, it just takes them longer to put together. If it needs fine resources, it takes a little longer to gather the resources. But also, wizards and scientists are kind of similar. After they have their types down, their moves are really kind of blueprints. With a wizard, they're spells. You can still improvise things based on your types, but your really hardcore go-to stuff you're going to have to define as, again, with a scientist, your blueprints, or if you're a wizard, spells that are unique. In this case, I made this guy an A-rank Kingmaker, so he's not necessarily a hardcore scientist. His thing is that he's like one of the Rockefellers. He's at the top of the shadow hand behind the governments. He's at the top of the cartels. He has access to the world economy at his whim. And since he's A-rank, that means he's a master of it. So yeah, Rockefeller. He's a B-rank biochemist, and that's where his specialties are going to come in for actual science. And then when it comes down to his starting package, once again, I had them revised. He would have S and then 4 Bs. And his S rank is in medicine, so that he can be of support to the group. He can be a healer, effectively. Especially as a biochemist, he can make the equivalent of heal pods. His next one down is performance enhancement. So he's going to be able to give people amphetamine cocktails or whatever they need to get them going. It might burn them out faster, but he can shoot them up to get them to fight harder. I gave him marksmanship so that he's able to deploy his medicine lovingly with a gun, or his performance-enhancing substances lovingly with a gun. And also as part of his blueprints, I gave him B-rank aggressive delivery system, so he can put anything he wants that he makes into a gun. And then lastly, I gave him a propulsion blueprint, so he can, between flying around, he can, do jetpacks, he can make rockets to deliver his stuff, he can work with or add propulsion, thrust-based flight onto anything that he makes. Also, as a scientist, he's human, so he still has a power level, but it's pretty weak. I put him at 3 to 15, because, he could become 5 times as powerful as he is if he really hops himself up on drugs, so that's a scientist. Now, I suppose I should stop blue-balling you guys and get into the mechanics of the game. Here's the mechanic for the success and failure when it comes to an assault or a challenge. It runs off of an expanded 12-point scale. I say expanded because it's far more than 12 points, but 12 are what will matter for most of gameplay. Here is the scale. 1 through 3 will mean that you missed or failed. 4 is a scratch. 5 is a hit. 6 actually causes damage. That'd be the difference between throwing a fork at somebody and stabbing somebody with a fork. It causes some damage. It's just not significant. A 7 will stagger the enemy, giving them enough pain to leave room for a combo or a quick follow-up attack. A 7 is a good sweet spot for to top out successful moves, because again, it gives them a combo or a follow-up. An 8 denotes injury. A score of 9 means that you will wound the enemy. Now, the difference between an injury and a wound, an injury would be like a sword slash across the abdomen or the back. With the Z fighters, it's going to cause a substantial amount of damage, but it's not going to limit their fighting ability. Now, a wound with a score of 9, that's going to drop their power level. It's going to drop their fighting power. It's going to slow them down a bit. Now, a 10 would be a mortal wound. Examples of this would be like when Tien got his arm chopped off against Nappa. It's a wound that if someone isn't treated, they are going to die. Score of 11 means the person will die, or they're very close to death. They'll probably get some last words in. Goku getting the hole punched through his stomach by the special beam cannon. That's an example of an 11. If you roll a 12, that's instant death. They don't get last words. They're gone. They're in another dimension. A good example of 12 is when Vegeta, and then later Goku, blew off the upper torso of Cell. That's a 12. Of course, Cell could survive that. Now, anything above a 12, like a 13, is where you leave just a stain. A 13 is what Vegeta did to Nappa when Nappa failed him on Earth. And 13s, 14s, 15s, that's what you're going to start needing to destroy someone like Cell or Majin Buu, when you have to kill every single part of them. So that's what I mean when it's an expanded 12-point scale, is especially when it comes down to, say, planet busting, you're going to need scores, 14, 15, 16 to destroy the moon, the earth, Namek. If you want to destroy a sun, you're probably going to have to get closer to a 20, something like that. But for the most part, you're going to stay on the 12-point scale. Well, how do you determine just how effective each move is? This is where the game has less structure than your typical RPG. You compare and make a best guess. If the characters have power levels, you compare the power levels. Then you look at what they're trying to do and add in their attack and defense arguments. In this case, all the stronger opponent really has going for them is a higher power level. That is, if the two opponents had an equal power level, the attacker would have the advantage. Then you have to figure out what portion of that advantage is diminished by the power gap. In this case, the power level means very little. Also, this move in particular is not meant to damage, so we are going to use a smaller die and add a flat number to that die. The best he can hope to achieve is to stagger the enemy and open them up for a combo, or in this case, run away. What about opponents that don't have power levels? Again, it's best guess. Compare the attack and defense arguments and figure out just where on the 12-point scale the attack could land. Then find out what die to roll and what numbers to add or subtract if necessary. Although what I've done so far with androids, or beings that don't have standard power level, is I take a gauging process. That is, the dice are larger at first because nobody really knows how effective the android's attacks are going to be, or the defense that the android has, like their armor, etc., are going to be against a new and powerful opponent. As the battle continues, let's say the android takes very little damage from enemy ki blasts. The die roll against the android gets smaller and smaller when you use ki blasts. If the android takes massive damage from melee strikes, the die roll still gets smaller, but points are added to the roll. So the spread of the effect, in either case, condenses down as the battle continues. But if you're effective, then that makes it more deadly for the android. A few of these problems are going to arise where power level has little to do with what's happening, like psychic attacks. Sure, an immensely powerful being might not be hurt as much, but it's their brain that's doing all the defending. Some people, like, say, Frieza or Turles, Lettuce, whatever you want to call them, are going to have such huge egos and massively evil thoughts because they destroy and or eat planets that they have a natural defense against anything but the most powerful psychics. That's why I say, again, it's best guess, and it's the loosest part of the system. So it does take some moderation and some agreement from the group. I'll fill out the rest of the time I have on this video with the timeline and a couple other things that might help you. As I said in the brief intro, your timeline should, at the start at least, mimic what happens in the Dragon Ball Z saga. That is, the first Saiyan coming to Earth, a couple pair of Saiyans coming afterwards, maybe do some of the movies in between, Lord Slug, Tree of Might, World's Strongest. Then you go to Namek, then you meet the Ginyu Force, then you fight Frieza, then you come back to Earth, and you have the androids. You can mix it up a bit if you want. You can do things out of order, but you got to make sure to scale the power levels correctly, or you're going to wipe out your entire party. What I've done so far is I started them off with the Dead Zone, then I had Raditz arrive, then I had them do Lord Slug. Obviously, Lord Slug was dumbed down because there was only 2 players and they hadn't gone to Namek yet. And then after that, Goku actually came down because he wasn't a part of the party. But they had worked together. They had all collected the Dragon Balls a few times. They're friends with Kami. They're friends with Master Roshi. And since they've worked with all these other NPCs, they have them available for training, etc., etc. In previous sessions, they didn't really work well with, and they were at odds with Kami and the others, so they didn't get much help. They didn't get help with training, they didn't get help with techniques, they didn't get brought to the lookout, and they didn't get things like Senzu Beans. They got blindsided by a lot of their opponents because they weren't working together. Now, as far as advancement when training somebody, you're talking about months or years at a time. Generally, if I'm going to do, let's say, moves, you can get an A rank move in a year, maybe 16 months. B rank move, easily 8 months. C rank, half a year. When it comes down to types, it'd take you about a year to get a C type, and that's if you do well. A year and a half or so to get a B type. It all depends on if you have good trainers. People are always asking about the hyperbolic time chamber. Well, first off, you got to be good. You got to be in good with Kami. And then you have to go in there with someone that either has an A rank, a master training type, or you have to have a training type yourself, or else you're not going to be able to survive. A couple of character concepts that we've had so far. Again, Saiyan Psychic, we've got a Piccolo clone. Right now we have one of Beerus's race. They aren't necessarily gods by themselves, so just the race as a demon summoner like Babidi. We've got a very powerful android. He's done very well. And we got a healer like Dende. They can always figure out some tricks to get through things, largely because, again, the people in the anime, they're dumb. They make stupid decisions. And so your characters, if they RP correctly, can spank the enemies. And I'll also let you know, because the die rolls, you aren't rolling a lot of dice, they can really screw over your game, especially if you have, a powerful person like a boss, and the boss is rolling low. It can really screw over what's happening. They beat Vegeta rather easily because Vegeta was rolling terribly. They also beat Goku pretty terribly because he was rolling low. So I have a solution. If you're fighting a boss character, like, let's say, any of the androids, Vegeta, the Ginyu Force, or not the Ginyu Force, the Captain Ginyu, boss characters. Have them roll 2 dice and take the highest of the die rolls. For, like, DBZ Universe peak bosses like Frieza or Cell or Majin Buu, have them roll 3 dice so that the bosses can't fail. I guess beyond that, if you want more detail, ask. I'll probably type up on the forums more character concepts and more what went on, but this is the rundown of the system I'm using, and I've run it for about 40 hours, and it's been a blast. Hope to hear from you.